Welcome to episode number 13 of Awaken the Feminine Within. And today we're getting and digging in all into human design. Now, I've mentioned this probably once or twice in my other podcast episodes. And today I have a guest with me, Jaycie Saltzman, and she is a human design expert. And she knows all things human design. And I wanted to bring on someone who is really, really well-versed in human design. It can be very, very overwhelming and very just like, what is this? So she's here with me today. She's going to give you the lowdown and like human design 101, basically, on what you need to know, why it's important for you, all that good stuff. So Jaycie, I am so excited to have you here today. Give us an intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey. No, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. My name's Jaycie. I dove into human design actually a year ago. So I've only been into this about a year. I've known about it for about 5 years, maybe 6 years. And yeah, it's super intriguing. It's always been something I've wanted to utilize. And yeah, this is something I started a business and help other people understand themselves through human design, which ultimately has helped me through the past year of my life. So yeah, that's what I do. And I'm super excited to be here.
Amazing. So what for you was the biggest differentiating factor that human design helped you with? I mean, I know it's probably like, I feel like at least for me, human design helped me in every single aspect of my life. But what do you feel like is the biggest takeaway that you had in following human design and following like your energy type and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question because I think it just helped me understand myself a lot better, how I should be making decisions, how I should be moving through life. It's basically just like the blueprint of you and like your being and who you are and how you should be doing things. And so once I dove in and understood myself fully, like my profile, my type, and my authority and strategy and all of these things, it made life easier and I didn't have to push against the grain so hard. And I think the catalyst for that was just like, life was just really hard. And I was tired of kind of navigating that way of like, what am I supposed to be doing? And always like, hands out like what's going on. And I definitely don't feel like that's where I'm at anymore, especially utilizing human design. So
that's huge. I feel so similar in, everything that you said, that life is just like not as hard anymore, which I think for people who are listening, that's going to be a big, I think, draw and magnetic pull towards, discovering and learning more about their own human design. So give us the cliff notes on what human design is for people who are like, I've never heard of this before. What's the tea?
Yeah. So yeah, like a lot of people will describe it. It's like the blueprint of your life. So there's so many different aspects of it. So just the spark notes or like the quick rundown of it is it's just a body graph of your chart. I think it's a mixture of like gene keys and astrology. And there's like one other thing in there. So it's based off of your birth chart. So it's very exact. It uses, the planets and your body. There's like energy centers. You have your profile, which is your conscious and unconscious line. That's kind of like just the conscious is your mind and the unconscious is like how would they describe it? It is. That's what they say. The conscious is your mind. The unconscious is just, it is what it is. Like that's your shadow self. That's really not something you can kind of manipulate. You have your type, which is, there's 5 different of those. And that's going to navigate more on like your energy and how you navigate. And, there's more common ones than others. And then, you have your energy centers. There's just so much to it. I guess the quickest way that I could describe it is just, it's the makeup of you as an entirety down to every energy center, every part of your body, every part of your being. I guess it's the quickest way I could describe that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that explanation. And I think that I think that's why I think from the outside perspective, it can be a little overwhelming because it's so descriptive and it's so detailed in like how much you can know about yourself. But like, so at least for me, I remember when I was, when I did my first couple readings, I was just like, I think I was stunned like into silence because I'm like, this is eerie. It's so eerie. how this like thing that I discovered only, this was about 2 years ago, could be so accurate and literally give me a roadmap of why I was so frustrated and told me exactly how I could, I mean, without a coach, it would be a little bit trickier, but it gave me at least like the starting point of how I could switch over into, just like you experienced, like having life be easier. So it can be definitely overwhelming, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's like it's well worth the amount of work. And I think, you know, the extra effort that it goes to seek out and understand what it is and like what it can mean for you as a person. So, okay, let's talk then about why. Like, why do you think, what would be the best? Well, no, because I mean, I guess we kind of answered that question already. I was like, why would people, you know, jump into human design? But basically, I mean, it's going to give you 101 on like how you function as a human being.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like is the kind of the hardest point for people when they discover what their type is? And when they're, well, actually, let's back up. I'm jumping all around here right now. That's because my brain is exploding with like, there's
with human design.
Specifically. So give us a lowdown on the types, because I feel like that's kind of the easiest way. So give us a brief description of each of the types, what they are, and so people can kind of maybe be able to lean in and be like, oh, I might be that or might be that. And it might pull them in at least to go to human design and actually populate what their type is.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, we'll just dive in. So the two more common ones are going to be your generators and your manifesting generators. So the manifesting generators is a combination of the manifestor and the generator, but it is a generator. Generator types are the type of people who are just supposed to do what lights them up. Specifically, generators, they're supposed to like listen to, a lot of them have listen to your gut feeling, listen to like what your body is telling you, what you want, what you don't want. Essentially, if it's like doesn't light you up and it's not something that you're like overly excited about, you shouldn't do it. Stay away from it, because that's going to put you out of alignment. Generators should be the person who's focusing on one thing at a time, because unlike like a manifesting generator, they can have their hands in multiple pots. Like they can do multiple things at one time and they'll succeed at it because they have that manifestor in there to kind of balance it out. But a generator is supposed to just focus on one thing at a time, follow it through and finish it. And maybe that's where like burnout and frustration can come for the generators. They're like doing too many things at one time and trying to succeed, and then they're not succeeding at any of it. And yeah, and then we have the manifestor, which is they kind of take on more of like the leadership role. Like they are the energy type that draws in ideas and can like share them with people, and or sometimes they'll just go off on their own and kind of dive into like this aspect of these ideas that they have, and people are like, what's going on? What are you doing? Where have you been? Like, and they're just off in their little world, just in their manifesting energy. And but they're here to like inform others before they act. And they just initiate a lot of things. And they work really well with generators and manifesting generators as well. Especially, I don't know, this is relevant and not relevant all the same thing, but like co-creating with somebody, if you're running, within a business or within something of that sort, I always did say like having a manifesting or a manifestor and like a manifesting generator, or a manifestor and a generator together just work really well together. And then we have a projector, which is, they make up like 22% of the population. Like this is one of the more rare ones. So they're the type of energy type that they have a lot of knowledge as well. Like they're the speakers, they're the like projector on the wall, or like projecting. That's why they're called projectors. But they have to be invited for their information. Like they have to be asked, like, what would you recommend? What would you think? If they're not asked and they're just willy-nilly like throwing their words around at people, they're going to end up living out of alignment and not feeling fulfilled and not feeling good within themselves. But also and it's super funny. I did a chart reading on somebody like not that long ago, and we were like having a conversation, and they were talking about how they like did construction or something. And they were like, yeah, I would just like work a couple of hours and then I would go hide for the rest of the day. And then I'd come back at the end of the day, and I like did their chart and pulled it up, and I was like, oh, you're a projector. That makes sense. Projectors are only supposed to work actively like 2 to 3 hours a day. Doesn't mean they can't work like an 8-hour, corporate job or whatever, but like honed in, focused 2 to 3 hours a day. The rest of the day, they're supposed to take it easy. And they make really good management or really good leaders, really good bosses because they're supposed to be telling people what they're doing. But I just thought that was really funny. I did a reading and I was like, of course you're a projector. Like if you're going and hiding, like that's just your energy type. Yeah. And then the last one that we have is the reflector. So this is like the most rare. I think this is like a very, very low percentage of the population. So reflectors have all of their energy centers open, and when we'll dive into that, I'm sure, a little bit, but just spark notes. When your energy centers are open, you kind of take on the outer world and like other energies around you through your energy centers, and they reflect it back to you. So say, there's something wrong. A lot of like activists and people who are like, fighting against certain things are reflectors because they're like taking on what's wrong or like what might not be working and reflecting it back and being like, this is what we need to work on. This is what we need to do. So I think reflectors are they're really rare, but they're really cool to have in your life because it just kind of shows you like ways that you can work on yourself. And that's the purpose in their life. So they're definitely like I don't want to say slower, but they have to move their energy a little bit slower and they have to kind of process things a little bit longer. And so, yeah, they're definitely a huge, I think they're a little bit newer too. This is one of like the newer energy types. I mean, how new is new, but compared to the rest of them. That's the reflector. And I think I've only come across like one. I've done so many readings that I've come across one reflector. So that just shows you how rare they are.
That's really funny because I actually have two friends who are reflectors, and I laugh because and both of them like I get along really well with. So I was coming to this conclusion that I was like, maybe I'm just supposed to be like really close friends with reflectors. And it's just really funny because both of them are moms. And every time like I could feel their frustration, I'm like, I think you need to create a little bit more alone time because you're literally it's like because you're a mirror, right? As a reflector. And so you're like siphoning, you're not siphoning, but you're taking on all this energy and it's just so overwhelming. And they're like, oh, I don't know why I'm like I can't process anything and I'm frustrated. And I'm like, I think that's because you just need more time by yourself to like refill your own cup because you're just nothing but here for other people and taking other people's energies. So I love all those breakdowns. I'm a generator and I was like kind of trying to guess what you were because I was like, it's so funny because I don't really think about it too much in terms of like even when I have coaching clients, sometimes I'm like, okay, I think they're either one of these two. So I want to guess, of course, because I feel like this. I'm sure you probably play this game too, where you're just like talking to people probably. You're like, what are you? Okay, piecing this together. So I'm going to guess that you're either a manifestor or a manifesting generator.
I'm actually a generator, but
okay.
I I'm a generator too. Yes. No, that generating energy. I love manifesting generators. I wish I was a manifesting generator. Yeah, no, they're amazing. But I do love being a generator too. It's just following the cycle of like the energy surge, which I'm sure you can understand and relate. It's like up and down. But yeah,
totally. Awesome.
That's
okay.
Funny.
Well, let's get into the energy centers then themselves. So break us down because I feel like the energy centers are so like, I feel like the energy centers make up like a bulk, at least for the bigger portions of like what human design is. So explain to us what those are and what it means for someone, like, how it relates to a person and why it tells them, like, for a generator versus projector versus, manifestor or whatever, like those centers, to me, like, can't have your type without the centers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So diving into, there's 9 energy centers and I don't think I've seen one chart that had all of them filled in, if I want to remember correctly. The different types, you have your head. I want to say it's your ajna. I can't ever pronounce it correctly. Your throat center, your G center, your heart center, your solar, your spleen, your sacral, and then your root. So those are the 9 that make up your body. So there's a little bit extra, kind of correlates with like your chakras. And yeah, so how it correlates with each type is essentially your authority. So like where you make decisions from. And those two, like, let's say we'll just dive into the authorities too, because this is, I guess, I don't know, I hope that's the question that you're asking. This is how they correlate with each type, each profile. Yeah. So your authority is how you make decisions, and how you make decisions is based off of where your energy centers are filled in. Like a generator is going to have something different than a manifestor. A reflector has no energy centers filled in at all. And yeah, so starting with your, like the first one, you have your sacral authority. So a lot of manifesting generators and generators tend to have that one filled in. And so this is like where I was talking about earlier, listening to your body, listening to your gut. So if it's not, this is what they say, a hell yes, it's a hell no. Like basically if your whole body is not saying, oh my gosh, I love this, I want this, that's where listening to your authority, listening to your body, and listening to your energy centers are going to really allow you to live in alignment, live within your type, and live within your profile. And you're going to have less friction with that. So yeah, that's one of the authorities. And then you have your emotional authority as well. So that one lies in the solar. And again, I mean, this can vary as well from like manifesting generator, mostly your generators are going to be like solar, sacral type. And this one is like when you're sitting in your emotional authority, as that lies in your solar, you need emotional clarity before making decisions. So this can look different for everyone. But if it's, and this is so hard to explain without without overwhelming, because you have like your unconscious and your conscious, and then you have your energy centers and everything. So we'll leave that at that until we dive into like what those mean, and then I can backtrack and come back and explain those. But so listening to your emotional clarity, essentially that means sometimes you have to take a moment. Sometimes it's not like an impulse decision, where listening to your sacral is going to be a little bit more impulsive. Like my body's telling me this. But yeah, so giving yourself some time, giving yourself a little bit. It doesn't have to be, 30 days or a week or whatever. It can just be like, I need to listen to what's going on and make sure that this is the correct process. And okay, and then we're going to dive in. There's just a few more, but
because the emotional authority, everyone has like, because I was reading something that there's like, what do they call that? Like, there's like different waves, and everybody has a different emotional authority wave. Yes. And so, and I don't know. Yeah. And so everyone has like, which I thought was really interesting, because then that made me think about like, well, what is my initial reaction to something, right?
Yeah.
Like, which wave am I? Because it was like a little chart of like different, waves that someone could be.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really fascinating, because it made me question, like, what does my process need to be for my emotions when it comes to something that comes into my life, or like, a last minute thing, or like say like a difficult client, or, whatever. And so it was just really fascinating, because I don't think I ever thought about my emotions in that state, that like, oh, this is how I should process them. Mm-hmm. So I need to respect, like, if it's an up curve, and then I need to like wait till it like goes down, or some people it's like, it looks like a sliding upscale, and they need to like, they might have no reaction, and they need to wait for it to like go up, and then kind of feel through it, and then like come down, and then, make a decision. And so I just think that learning all these different aspects of human design, like while it might be overwhelming, it's just so freaking insightful, because I'm like, oh, this is just how I'm supposed to, how I can expect my emotions to be, and at what stage of the emotion can I process the clarity, and then make a decision from there, because I will be less inclined to make a mistake or a decision coming from out of alignment, due to understanding what my emotional authority is when it comes to, all that stuff. So I just think it's a really beautiful, but also so fascinating aspect of, human design that's obviously pertinent. But I wanted to just touch on that before you go into the next thing, because it's amazing.
It is amazing. No, I love that. And it's so true. Like this is like one of the more important aspects, is like correlating your authority and like your energy centers together, just due to that fact. I think that alone and in and of itself has helped me waver from making I don't want to say bad, but like decisions that aren't going to be in alignment for myself, which has helped long term with like where I'm at in life and what I'm doing and what fulfills me and that kind of aspect. So yeah, 100% I agree. Okay. So yeah, we have, there's 5 more after that. So we have a splenic authority. So when that's defined, this tends to lean towards like a manifestor or a projector. So if you won't have a defined solar and you won't have a defined like emotional solar or defined sacral or defined solar for this when you have a splenic authority. Yeah. So this is just pretty much about like staying in tune with your body, because projectors and manifestors specifically, like they're the type of people who are in their heads a lot, and it's kind of hard to just be like floating around in your head all the time. So this one kind of asks you or puts the pressure on, might not be the right phrasing, but puts the pressure on like really leaning into your body as well, because it's really important for manifestors and projectors specifically in this aspect to just not be so like floating around. This tells you to like nourish your body, meaning like taking care of your well-being and like feeding and fueling your body properly, just because of the aspect of where this energy center is. It's going to give you the proper, like, I don't want to say just energy, but the proper like energy about yourself that's going to allow you to show up in the way that you're supposed to within this authority. I mean, other than that, it's just about listening to your body. So this one will tell manifestors and projectors, because I noticed too, when projectors, they're in their head a lot, that's when they're just like word vomiting, which is also probably not the right phrase, but oversharing or overcorrecting or over whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's just about listening to your body and stepping out of your mind and following that. And then the next one we have is ego authority. So, and again, this one is going to tell you to like get out of your head and get into your heart instead of your body. Listening to your body cycles and showing up when you feel like it and not when you don't feel like it. And that's something I feel like as a society, we have just kind of molded and morphed people into, is showing up when, we might not feel like it. It doesn't feel in alignment. Maybe we need to do it for the other person otherwise we're going to feel guilty. Or maybe we need to, get up and work 10 days in a row because like hustle culture and this, that, and the other. And that's another reason that I actually love human design, is because it's helped pull out of that. But this authority specifically, I feel like teaches people, or should show people, that we're not here to, be hustling all the time. Like, you have to listen to your body, you have to feel your body and your mind, and lean into your heart and do what feels right for yourself. But yeah, and then we have self-projected authority. So this one's pretty rare. I actually don't think that I've maybe seen a couple of these in some charts, but nothing super predominant. You get, because the manifestor, the manifesting generator, and then the generator, like those are the 2 most popular types. And so I see a lot of sacral or emotional authority. So we have self-projected authority. So this could be projectors, sometimes even manifestors as well. So this is, you need to hear yourself speaking, hear yourself speaking out loud and being able to make decisions and having people to kind of bounce off of I feel like these kind of steer away from like the question. So I'm sorry about that. But because the other ones are like more energy centers, these are just a little bit more into the authority aspect. I mean, we've made it this far, so I'll just keep diving in. But yeah, so bouncing is off of other people and allowing yourself the space to like feel heard and feel seen, but also listening to yourself so you can make correct decisions without, being in your head too much. And then we have your environmental authority, which is essentially just diving into your environment and where you're at, and you make your decisions based off of like how safe you feel, the environment and the space surrounding you. So really creating a space that's and that one probably relates more to your root, because it's like your home, your security, and your safety. And so I've seen a lot of people have their root chakra. It's probably about 50-50, but their root energy center is defined. And that's, I mean, it can go either way for how where this goes as far as like profile type or energy type. But yeah, so if you struggle with like, it's important for you to make decisions based off of your environment, the space that you're in. And if you're struggling, kind of reevaluating like where you're at. And then we have the lunar authority, which is for reflectors only. Like I said, they have to take a little bit longer to like make decisions, which means that they essentially just have to wait like a lunar cycle. So 28 days before making any like big life decisions. And because they don't have any energy centers defined, that's why they have to wait so long, is because they don't have anything to kind of pull their energy from. It has to be like outside sources, and it has to be like, okay, this is, I need to take my time. I need to take a moment, and I need to be in a really good space and evaluate all my options before I dive in and make this decision. So yeah.
Okay. So I want to expand a little bit on like what's the best way to describe it? Like those energy centers, but in the context of like the sacral and the non-sacral and the defined and the undefined, because I feel like for me, understanding as a generator, like for anyone, manifestor, manifesting generator, even the projector, having an understanding of what that meant totally changed my entire perspective on life. Like literally, like how I perceive networking, how I perceive growing my business, how I perceive the people I hung out with. Yeah. Even like how because I have kids. And so like understanding as a generator and having sacral energy and how it affected everyone in my household was like, oh my gosh. And even my husband, when I did everyone's charts, like after I discovered mine, and understanding like how it connected to other people was like, oh my gosh, it was such a relief and just so eye-opening to understand like what that meant. So I want you to explain like, that, I don't want to call it like a root because I don't want it to get confused with like that root center, but just overall what it means to have that sacral energy or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, you have like your head, all the different centers, like you have your throat center. We'll dive into that one just because I'll go down a few of them. Like say you have a defined throat center. So you're going to be really distinct in how you speak. You're going to be somebody who can utilize that to your advantage within business, within relationships, within any aspect. And you just have a very defined sense of how you express yourself and how you, I don't know why, that's just the energy that I get from when you have a defined throat center it's like you just know what you're saying, what you're doing. When you have an undefined energy center, an undefined like throat center, I don't have a defined throat center. So I don't know if you can notice, but it struggles with, or I tend to struggle with like communication, expressing myself in the proper way. Even, as far as like business wise, showing up on social media, like that should not be a way that I should show up in my social media platforms, is like speaking all the time, because it's not defined for me. I'm not going to be able to express myself in a way that's necessary for people to understand in a way that I need them to, or in a way that I'm because I have my head and I have my how do you know how to pronounce that? Ajna?
I think it's Ajna. That's how I've just Ajna.
Okay. But yeah, so like these two up here, like I'm always in my head, like I'm always in between these two, which, this is where like ideas and like energy, like this one's like, your outer energy, this one's like your mind and thinking. And because these two are defined, like I'm always in between here. I have a million things going on in my head all the time. And not to say that if they're undefined for you that you don't, it's just the way that my ideas and thoughts process don't correlate with me being able to express them in a way that I need to. Whereas somebody who might have, an undefined head, but like a defined ajna and a defined throat, like their thoughts and their mind, they're going to be able to express it in like a really predominant way. That's like, oh, they're, public speakers, projectors, like people like that, like who have their throat defined, like those are usually projectors or like, manifestors, people who are supposed to be speaking in that way. You have your G center, which is your will, I think it's your ego. Yeah. A lot of people, I think they waver in between like G center and ego, but yeah, that's your self. Like, so when you have a defined G center, you have a defined sense of self. When you have an undefined G center, you have an undefined sense of self. And that doesn't mean that you don't know who you are or like you don't know what your hobbies are or whatever. It's just when it's defined, you're a little more certain. I feel like a lot of people born with like a defined G center come into this world and they're like, this is who I am. This is what I want. You know, people who don't have an undefined G center, they probably come into this world like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just navigating one step at a time. And then same with your heart, you know, like your heart center is like, I want to say it's like the core. It's like how you know, it's how you love, it's how you receive love, it's how you build relationships. When it's defined, that might be a little bit easier for you. And when it's undefined, it's not as easy for you to be able to, and not to say that it's extremely difficult, just there might be some more barriers in there that, or making decisions from your heart. You know, when it's defined, it's like, I love this, I want to do this. But when you know, I'm an undefined heart center, it's like, where am I at? Like, you know, I feel like those are kind of the difference between like a defined and undefined is like one's certain and one's not so certain. And then you have your solar, which is like your gut feeling. And like for me, I think I have a I do have a solar authority. So like I make every decision from gut feelings and like what lights me up and what feels good. So that's defined for me. Somebody who doesn't have defined, they might not be able to make decisions from that aspect and be able to understand, you know, does this bring me joy? Does this light me up? Does this feel good in my gut, in my being? And then your sacral. So that is like for, I mean, any aspect that's like your, I mean, in like chakra aspect, that's like your sexual energy, your like, for, you know, I don't know, feminine energy, or like more, how else would I explain this? But yeah, I mean, that's essentially how I view it and how I look at it when you make decisions too. Like that's also like an aspect of where it's correlated with like your gut feeling or like your lower body area where you're just like, does this light me up? Does this feel good? But yeah, your sacral energy is super important in making a lot of decisions, especially for you, like the feminine awakening, right? I feel like those two correlate very much. You have to lean into your sacral energy in order to really embody a lot of aspects in life. And so I guess the same thing, like when it's defined, it might be a little bit easier to embody that and lean into that gut feeling and understand what that means and process and make decisions. Do you have your sacral? Is that what's defined for you for your authority, or like what?
I'm trying to remember because like my center's defined in terms of authority. I don't recall. And it was funny because I was actually thinking of, at least for people who are listening on audio, I was thinking about sharing my screen and sharing my chart so that if people want to go to YouTube and can actually see like what a chart looks like, because I think, you know, for the people that are listening, they might be like, oh, it's gibberish, it's Latin, right? Like it feels like another language, and it very much is. It is another language, but I think once you like, you know, because, you know, like the centers, there's just different, sometimes visually seeing the chart, at least for me, I'm a visual person. So I think sometimes like seeing that, I'm trying to remember with the emotional authority because I don't remember. So it's funny because, you know, when you were talking about like the head, the anja, and the throat, because I mean, for me, very undefined, it's clear. So if you're listening on audio, like if you get a chance, pop on to like the YouTube, and I'll probably put the link to the YouTube in the podcast like description. So that way it's easy for you to just go and connect and listen and watch on YouTube. Like once you actually visually see the chart, so the top three, so you have head, it goes head, anja, and then throat, right? Or is it head, throat, and anja?
It's head, ajna. I can't pronounce that word.
And then throat.
So
throat. I remember when I got my reading done, and I was like, you know, exactly like you said, like, you know, for people who have it defined, it's easier for them to like speak and communicate and, you know, basically use their mouth. It doesn't feel like you're stupid. Not that, but I remember that being such a pain point for me being a business owner.
Yes.
And always like, I remember specifically asking the gal who did my chart, and I was like, oh, so is this why I find it so hard to post on social media? And she was like, 110%. Like your way. And when I tell you the relief that I found, that I was like, holy crap. Like, this is why I feel so, like, it felt like the social media aspect of running my business was just so, like, it felt like it was ruining my life, literally, because it's like everyone says, like, this is what you have to do, and this is how you have to show up, and this is how you have to be consistent, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, and so I was talking about this with her, and she's like, well, yeah, that doesn't really apply to you at all. And I was like, what? You're telling me that, like, I don't have to listen to, like, all this advice that's out there? And she was like, no. And it wasn't until I got more in touch with my sacral that then my throat like became like, it like clicked.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, now I can speak. And this podcast is a great example of that. And I have so many people that are like, oh, you talk so well and you're so clear. And I'm like, that's because it's the topic.
Yeah.
Like if I were to talk about other things, like I'm sure I could talk, but I don't think it would resonate the same because this is like in alignment, like with my sacral energy.
Yeah.
And it's almost like getting in touch with my sacral opened up my throat, but only for what needed to come out. So learning to understand and respect like what needed to come out, I think was a key part in understanding and not feeling like resentment towards my undefined throat.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sure as, you know, is yours defined or undefined, your throat?
My throat's undefined, and then my spleen is undefined. Yeah. And I have
I feel like not being able to communicate can just be, it feels like you're not human because you're just like, well, I can't talk.
Yeah, it's really hard, especially when you, like you said, when you are like running a business and you're like diving into this aspect and like you have so much going on, and it's so crazy too. Like the whole lower portion of your chart is like completely filled in. So I love that, honestly. But yeah, when you just have so much going on and all of these ideas and you're not able to like express it in the proper way, it's like, how can I navigate? But like you said, yeah, diving into your sacral is, especially as a woman in today's society specifically, like it is so empowering and so important. And I feel like I love that you said that those two go hand in hand.
Okay. So basically, if you're listening on audio, go and click the YouTube link because we are going to describe essentially my chart here so that people can understand. And Jaycie's going to break it down for you visually just because
perfect,
really ultimately, if you want to go and look at your own chart, which you can plug in all your information on My Human Design. I think it's .net. It's not .com.
Yeah.
It could be incorrect. It could be just Google My Human Design. So what you're going to see is essentially like if you're on YouTube and you go look at our YouTube, you're going to see what the chart looks like. So Jaycie's just going to break it down real quick, how to read what you're going to see on My Human Design.
Yes.
Now, just to clarify as well, if you want like the full breakdown, if you're, getting into the podcast and you're like, this is hard to listen to because it's another language, probably go and, just skip ahead like at least 3/4 or halfway through the podcast episode, and you're going to see like where we're going to get into the visual aspect of things. Then what you're going to want to do is if you're finding this intriguing and you just want to get straight to it, just schedule a reading with Jaycie is going to be just the easiest way for you guys to like get right to the point.
Yeah.
And for her to be able to read and customize everything that's in your chart for you, and she can give you the lowdown. But this podcast episode is really just to give you like the cliff notes of what human design is. And then once we're done breaking down this chart, I want to get into a little bit more with Jaycie here, like just why you need human design and why I feel like as in today's society, like really ultimately, it's just like, who doesn't want a little like roadmap to happiness? Like that's pretty much like what human design is.
Yeah.
And just in the context of like, how your life can change and what it can look like once you actually apply it. And we'll get into that towards the end of the episode. So Jaycie, we have my chart up here. And so just give us a rundown, like first things first, like what you kind of see and how to read, I think like the right-hand side, because there's a lot of words. I think when people see, the visual chart, they're going to be like, ooh, I don't know what that is. So give us a rundown on the right-hand side, like what, what it means and how to read through it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so your type, that's going to be your energy type, how you show up in this world. Your strategy is going to be how you make decisions, how you respond, or how you respond to making decisions. Your authority is going to be where you should be making your decisions from, whether that's an energy center or just your authority type. Your definitions. So, okay, this is a little bit more intricate. I don't know that I want to completely dive into this because there is a ton of, you have like a single definition, split definition, triple definition, and quad definition. Basically, it's just like the trajectory of like your years. I don't know. That's a whole other aspect that we can get into.
We'll skip over the definition for now.
Okay, sounds good. Your profile. So that's going to be, if you look at this chart here and you see all of the planets on the left and then the planets on the right. So your planets on the left are going to be, I want to say those are the conscious ones. I feel like different depending on what chart, where you generate your chart from. So usually the one on the left is going to be your conscious and the one on the right is going to be your unconscious. So that's essentially what your profile is. So the first number is going to be your conscious and your second number on your profile is going to be your unconscious. Every single number has a different meaning. I will circle back to that and dive into that. Your incarnation cross is going to be the reason you are here, like why you incarnated in this lifetime. Like, so if you ever want to Google that or research that, there's so many different definitions. But if you ever do Google that, make sure that you put in the numbers, like your incarnation cross is
40/37 and then 16/9.
So type that in exactly as that is, because if you flop the numbers, that incarnation cross is going to have a different meaning. But yeah, so that's going to be your purpose in this lifetime. And then you have your not self theme, and then when you're living in alignment, right? So for you, the proof that you're living in alignment is that you are satisfied. Like satisfaction is like I'm good, I'm here, I feel all right, I feel amazing. You're living in alignment. When you're living in your not theme self, that means you're living out of alignment of your chart, of your type, your profile, your authority, your strategy, all of that. And for you, that means you'll show a lot of signs of frustration. And this one specifically, when I tell people like they're not theme self, every single time they're like, no way. I feel that so much. And I'm like, yes, like your chart really does tell you like when you're not in alignment and how you need to get there and how to feel fulfilled. Okay. And we will go back to the profiles. So there's 11 different profile ways. Like, I don't know, I'll just dive into the numbers. So every number is going to mean the same. It just is going to be like, there's a 1-4 and a 4-1, right? So a 1-4 means like your first line's conscious and your second line's unconscious. So that's kind of how you show up. Like the 1 is how you show up consciously, how you make decisions within the mind. The 4 is just like, it is what it is. Like it's just certain. It's not really something you really pay attention. It's more like your shadow self. It's like stuff that you don't really like see and can't really manipulate. I guess that's the only way that I can explain that. For line 1, so that's the investigator. So this is somebody who usually likes to like research, get to the bottom of things. Like you love to obtain like a bunch of facts and information and know everything before you even dive into or like, you know, get into something. You like to feel safe and secure. Then we have our 2 line, which is the hermit. So, but you're also really good at anything that you do. So this person, like you love to spend time alone. You really only do what lights you up. And your purpose is also to share those skills. So like a 2-4, like you are consciously going to be like leaning into your hermit a little bit more than you would lean into your 4 line. Really crafty, really creative, somebody who's just really good at anything that they do. And your purpose is to like share that, like your knowledge with people as you're kind of diving into that. It can be social and like you are really social when you feel like it, but you're not always going to be in the mood to be social. So then we have the line 3, which is the martyr. This is like the experimental. I'm a 3-5. So for me, like consciously, the 3 line for me is I'm somebody who experiments. Like I will dive into so many different aspects and not all at one time, especially since I'm a generator. I've learned my lesson on that. But this is like I always like to explain this as like the trial and error line, because you're somebody who like is doing so many things and learning their lessons through everything that you do. And which is frustrating. Like we're like, I don't know. I know a lot of 3-5s too. And they're always like, man, like I just need to get this right. Like, why isn't this, working for me? Then we'll dive into the 4 and then I'll get into the 5 and what the 5 means. But the opportunist is line 4. So I know you're a 4-6. So this is the conscious line for you. So you're the opportunist. Like you're very social. You can become friends with people, like you meet and greet. This is like networking, which is so funny because like that makes so much sense. This podcast in general, like you're really good at it. You do have a really great way of like how you communicate as well. but yeah, just meeting and putting yourself out there and putting yourself in social settings, like that's kind of where your conscious line is. And that's where you'll like extremely succeed what you're doing. So very on brand. And then line 5. So this is the unconscious line for me. So I'm going through all of my 3, there's certain chapters that you kind of move through all of these things. And yeah, so the 5 is the wisdom, the knowledge. So after I'm learning all of these trial and error, as time goes on, I'm now able to share and express like all of these learning curves and lessons with others. So a lot of people who have like a 3-5 profile type tend to have like a lot of trial trauma and like things that happen early, probably like their first 30 some years of their life is building, and then still furthermore beyond that. But yeah, just going from learning your lessons to sharing them. And then we'll dive into your 6th line, which is your unconscious line. So this is kind of where we dive into, you tend to have like different phases in your life as well. So the first phase is 0 to 30, which is your trial and error phase. You then have your 30 to 50, which is like more of your reflective state where you observe, you understand life a little bit deeper, and you can really implement like everything that you've learned prior into what's showing up for you. And then the last is like from 50 and beyond. And that's like really where you embody this 6th line. And yeah, it's just like, I feel like that's the only way that you can really explain that 6th line. And I feel like it correlates with your 4, right? So like being social and having really good connections and building yourself up and building your business and doing all of these things. And then, you get to embrace all of that by the time you're in your later life, which I feel like now forward is like really good, like understanding yourself deep and really, I don't know, building that aspect to where you're at or where you're going, even though I feel like you're already there. I don't know.
Yeah. Funny because when I had my reading done, I was literally turning, I'm trying to think. So that would have been almost 2.5 years ago is when I did my first reading. And I remember she was like, oh, this is going to be a big year for you, because that 31 to 32 with where it lined up with like my chart and everything, she was like, this is where you literally, I was moving into that second phase that you just like broke down, like the 3 different phases. And she was like, yeah, she's like, so it's totally normal. And it's so funny because like that year specifically, like it was the shittiest year and everything like switched over. Having her like, and this is what I mean, like this is why human design I feel like is so powerful, because you get the awareness and you get the explanation of like the why things are happening in your life. And instead of just taking it out and being like, oh, it's because of whatever, Mercury's in retrograde, like instead of taking it out on like that perspective and kind of blaming it on like, oh, well, this is just not my year, you get to have this awareness. And like it's almost like you have this understanding with the universe of like, oh, well, I don't have to like resent or hate, because I understand like why this is happening and like why I'm, these things are happening to me, or why I'm in this phase of like learning. Because with all of this knowledge in terms of like the human design and the chart and the reading, it's like you're given this like little, it's like your little guidebook to life. That's like the best way I can explain it. And you're like, oh, well, great, what chapter am I supposed to go to understand like this specific thing? And what might be like a gate or a channel or like, your profile or the numbers or, unconscious and conscious, things like that. But either way, this is where, like for you, how it's so amazing that you're out there helping people to be able to read their profiles, because it's like you're the guidebook expert, right? And so you can kind of give people like, the shortcut, easier version on how to read the guidebook. So anyways, finished with the profile numbers, but I had to sidetrack with that because I mean, there's just been so many ways that human design has given me so much relief and like has reduced my anxiety, because I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense now.
Yes. No, that's pretty much it for profile types and numbers. It just depends. Like I like to break down the numbers more than I like to break down like the, because there's a 1-3 and a 1-4, but there's also a 4-1, and then there's a 2-5, but there's also a 5-2. So essentially it's just ultimately like how your numbers lie and like how you present, how you yourself is presented into this world, depending on the conscious and unconscious. But no, I'm really glad that's ultimately like what I hope anybody takes away from this is that human design has really, like you said, helped, you know, myself or even clients that I've had. Like I still communicate with like a lot of my clients who are like, you know, have dove into themselves so much deeper because they understand themselves on a deeper level through human design. And it helps alleviate that like wandering or like questioning of like, where am I going with life? Like, what am I doing? Like, is this correct? Is this not correct? Why am I feeling this way? You know, but how cool that you happen to get a human design reading and what like in like such a monumental year of your life. Like that's what I hope that any sixth line will understand or take away from this as well, is that life's really hard your first 30 to 32 years of your life. Like it's a lot of navigating and trial and error and figuring out what's going on and what works for you and what doesn't work for you on like, I feel like an extreme level for sure. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay. So is there anything else like visually on this chart, say people are like switching on YouTube and watching this, that they feel that you feel like is really pertinent for them to at least kind of like understand, like, you know, for the most kind of or quickest, simplest way for them to understand about their chart? Otherwise we can exit out of sharing the screen and kind of get into some other things.
So we'll dive into gates first. So essentially there's 64 gates. They all have different meanings. That's a lot to go over, so I'm not going to go over like every single one.
Don't go through all 64. I feel like that already takes me like, well, you know how long reading takes, but that's a lot of time. So don't go into that.
No, yeah. So they all have different meanings. So the gates are going to be these numbers here that are in your energy centers. And those, yeah. So if it's filled in, it's going like half of the way. That means it's a gate. If it's filled in from like down here at the bottom left-hand side, like you have one filled in from your, like one of your energy centers all the way over to the other. So that is a channel. And that means that energy center, like it's a conduit essentially. So it amplifies like from one energy center to the other. And then I feel like I want to kind of dive into this. So you're going to see like a mixture of colors between like the black and the brown in between the gates and the channels. And for a long time when I first started human design, I was like, what does that even mean? What are these numbers? What is going on? So essentially that's just like a mixture of like your conscious and unconscious. Like there's different ways that it shows up. And so that's the quickest way that I can describe that for you guys. So say like, I don't know on this, like my colors are different. Like if you can actually generate charts on my website as well. But yeah, so depending on where, it looks like her tan is conscious.
Tan is conscious and is unconscious.
Yes. So we have like a conscious and how it shows up like through your gate, which that's like a whole other aspect. We don't really have to dive into that, but it just means that you're like more aware and more able to like manipulate that aspect of your chart, where the unconscious means like that gate is just what it is. It's just going to show up as the energy of that gate. So yeah, that's channels, that's gates. That is the energy conduit of like conscious, unconscious. So from there, we are going to dive into the variables. So you have 4 different variables. You have your 2 on this side, 2 on this side. And so how I like...
That's what you're talking about right now, right?
Yes. Yeah, the arrows.
Yeah.
I know sometimes other human design readers are like weird about calling them arrows. So I don't really care either way. But yeah, so the arrows up at the top. So you're going to have 4 of them. So you have like your digestion, you have your awareness. So your top left is digestion, your top right is awareness, your bottom left is your environment, and then your bottom right is perspective. If it's your digestion is essentially like how you take things on. People, places, things, food, everything. Your awareness, I mean, that's just like same thing, like your perspective of, or like how you view things, how you see things, your environment as well. A lot of people will say that that's like your like manifestation arrow. That's like another word, another thing that people will call it. And then you have like your perspective on the side, which is just again, like how you see things. So how I like to describe these are, if it's pointing to the left, it is more feminine, more fluid, less structure, less routine. So a lot of the times when I see that people, how do I say this? I will describe like the bottom left arrow is like how you take on, I don't know how, let me describe this in a different way. This is like a factor, like, are you a morning or a night person? And this is how I tell people, like, if they should have like morning, get up early, have a nice morning routine, or if they should, not have such a structured routine is based off of this bottom left arrow. It's pointing to the right, you need more structure and routine. If it's pointing to the left, you need less structure and routine. But yeah, so essentially it's just your masculine side and your feminine to your masculine side. So one way is going to be more fluid, one way is going to be more structured. And that's just kind of how you navigate with each one of those aspects. So like how you take on the world, how you view things, how you, perceive things, how your environment that you're in, like essentially if you're in your more feminine, like, you don't have to have so much like organization and like cleanliness or like a routine. But if you're more in your masculine in your environment, you want to have like organization and cleanliness and, all of those kinds of things. That's the quickest way. That wasn't that quick to describe, but
no, that's okay. And I mean, ultimately, like, this is really just a clip.
Yeah.
The easiest way for people to be able to understand this is to go and get a reading.
Yeah.
Really, ultimately, like, that's how you're going to get the most, like, take home and, explanation as to, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
Perfect.
For those that are, you're, want to jump back to the audio or finish this episode, like, when you're in your car on another day, that's totally fine. But I feel like what I want to just finish on and touch on with you, Jaycie, is like how really ultimately, like, when you are doing readings for people, first off, generally, how long is a reading? So people can really understand how much information they're taking home. Because I think it's like when I first saw, and the readings can vary depending on who you do them with. And I don't know if you have like a level 1 and a level 2, because I know that everyone does it differently. But what can people expect if they want to come and do a reading?
Yeah. So ultimately, I still like that my human design, like I have a website that actually like generates your chart like that. And you can click on, you can download your chart instantly through PDF. But yeah, and then I also offer like a more extensive like reading, all the information that I've put onto my website that you can, download and get whatever, like that's all my information that I've like put into previous, because when I first started, I used to actually hand type them out and it would take me, it would be like 8 pages long and it would take me like 2 weeks per person. Like it would take me a really long time. But obviously I've, over the last year, I've accumulated all the information that I could possibly need. But yeah, to deep dive into your chart and essentially get like a more in-depth like understanding and description, like I like to keep it a little bit more like I can hop on, like a FaceTime or like a call with people, but a lot of people tend to lean more towards just like audio messages so they can keep and hold on to the messages and refer back to them. I have a lot of like past clients that like will still audio message me and be like, I need some clarity on this. and I'll just sit down and I'll have like, it's still like we're having a conversation, but just for like back, reference, I still have, people who deep dive and re-listen and send me messages later on that are like, I just re-listened to this or whatever. But yeah, so it's really at like your own time, and it's not like a super like sit down formal as much, I totally can be. If that were the case, it would probably take maybe 45 minutes to an hour of just like deep diving into, probably not even that, but just to give myself some grace of like deep diving and explaining. That's how long it would take. Yeah.
And like for people that are unsure about whether they should, like how that's not the right way of saying it, but like what's the take home for them? I mean, I know I've mentioned things like, throughout this podcast that have been like, I mean, totally, to be quite frank, I feel like human design was the best thing that like pivoted my success, in addition to like just feminine energy in general. But like human design led me to feminine energy. So I feel like if I hadn't have had the one, I wouldn't have gotten to the other. So what would you say to people who are just like, oh, but what difference is it than astrology? Like, am I going to really get more from it? Because I feel like astrology is like, it feels a little bit more overwhelming. I think it also feels a little bit more aloof and a little like, oh, like in terms of practicality. But I feel like human design is so much more practical in terms of like what take home you're getting and how to process like your life and make decisions and everything. So what would you say to someone who's like, do I really actually need this?
Yeah, I guess I can only speak from experience, like the reason that I do this is not, I don't do this because of the aspect of, it's a business and, this, that, and the other. Like I do this because of how beneficial it's been to my life in aiding in ways that are I'm going to describe them, but I don't want to say indescribable, but just really, I guess I'll just explain, like struggled with a lot of like mental health and like trauma and things in my life. And in the last few years, I've really had to deep dive and, navigate and figure out. And I think when I really started beginning to understand human design, it pivoted my life in such a monumental way that I wish that I could just like take it out of my brain and like show you guys. But yeah, I mean, I'm still pretty young. I'm 27, and last year I've been diving into human design, and which has really allowed me to follow my strategy and follow my authority and live my life. And yeah, I've gone through a lot. Like I'm, currently I just left my marriage and moved to a new city and diving into, business and everything. And as sad as it is, I'm the happiest that I've been. And that's because I really paid attention to like my body and where I'm making decisions from. And like my authority is sacral, actually. And so, yeah, leaning more into my feminine. If you go on my, social media, I really talk about that too, which has really been empowering. And yeah, this has just been the happiest year I could say that I've ever had in my entire life. And which is crazy because I feel like most people would look at it and be like, are you okay? Like, is everything? And I'm like, I'm doing great. And I know that I owe a lot of that into really deep diving into my human design, really understanding that I'm here to fulfill my happiness and I'm here to be the best me that I can be. And I'm here to really listen to my body and make decisions that are in alignment with how, feeling happy and feeling good. Like, I don't think that we're supposed to be here to like do the mundane day-to-day tasks and do everything that maybe, I don't know. I just feel like it kind of pulls you out of like this structure that we have been taught, and it really teaches you how to just be you and be authentic. And we're not all meant to be doing the same thing. We're not all meant to be, working a 9 to 5 or going to college, and not that there's anything wrong with either one of those, but I know that I'm not meant to be in that structure. And I think it helped pull me out of that as well and really understand like my purpose, and as well as, diving into my incarnation cross, like that also helps. But yeah, that's, I guess, the only way that I could get you to understand or get listeners to understand that it's just more than like an astrology reading or a chart reading or, human design reading. It's really just the blueprint of who you are. And it helps, like you said earlier, alleviate so much anxiety and so much stress and kind of pinpoint just your funnel to like who you're meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. I love everything that you said there. And it's so true. And I've had, such similar experiences. And I feel like for me, like it was manifestation first, then human design, then like what I, this feminine energy of like, it just felt like it was all like pieces to a puzzle. And it was all just like, so many light bulb moments. So many like, and also frustrations and learning, because it's not always the easiest, like going from out of alignment to into alignment once you discover what alignment means for you, which is why I wanted to have this podcast episode about human design, right? Because Everyone is always seeking, and I'm always just like, get away from the bro marketing, get into human design instead, right? Because it's like you get that personalized like roadmap and in business and in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that, your testimony and your experience has been, a big change, and there might be some, pain points along the way, but the outcome is always going to be more of what you desire, right? Which is like that root happiness and that joy and that peace and everything. So where can people connect with you and get your info?
Yeah. So my website is aligneddesign.me. That's where you can generate your chart. You can kind of read up on it. There's some other aspects to it as well. My social media, Jaycie__Lee. If you just Jaycie is how you spell my name. But if you just type in Jaycie Human Design, I will pop up. And yep, that's where I do most of my marketing and social media, especially on human design. So that's my website, that's my Instagram, and yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and giving us the cliff notes of human design. If you're a listener and you are a little bit confused, go watch the YouTube and then just kind of follow Jaycie on her socials. And really, that's like, I think the easiest way to get started is to, dive in.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thanks so much for having me. This was so great. I always love and enjoy talking about human design, and especially somebody who can grasp it and understand it. It's been really fun. So I appreciate you